Hi, this is Walter from Yellowstone Country Fly Fishing, and this is my Montana Guide Flies fly tying video for April 24th, 2025. And what I have here is a Caddis Emerger I call a Caddis Emerger, and 'tis the season. There's been a few around on the Gardner River, a few on the Yellowstone near hot springs and so on. But here in basically the next warm-up, I expect the Mother's Day Caddis hatch to start, and this is the emerger I use for that. If you go back through and look at some of my other patterns, the Clacka Caddis is one that I use as kind of an attractor caddis for this. Other olive-bodied caddis dry flies, the olive missing links, or that triple-wing caddis I tied a couple weeks ago. Things like that as my dry, and then I fish this behind it. And glass bead, on a nymph hook, but otherwise, just a glass bead for weight, so it doesn't sink much. This is a 16, it'll float underneath a 14. And it's named because a guide I know named Don McHugh told me about a caddis that I thought I was copying when I tied this, and then finally I actually got to see, he told me what was on it. And then I actually got to look at the ones he tied, and they look completely different. But still named it after him because it gave me the idea for it. But anyway, I'll shut up and start tying. This is a good, simple one. Alright, so my hook in the vise here is a 1XL nymph hook, barb smashed. And then I have an 11-aught glass seed bead that's kind of an amber color on here. And I can't remember the actual color of these beads because I've had this tube of beads for legitimately 20-25 years. But this is my favorite color of glass beads. You see, it's kind of got that sort of brown iris, kind of kaleidoscope look. This is almost the only glass bead I use. I need a pretty good reason to use any others. And don't buy these from a fly shop. I mean, they're literally, if you buy what they call our killer caddis bead, it is this bead that they just repackaged and sold for twice as much. There's no difference. It's not like a brass bead where it's actually specially made for fly tying. I tend to buy my beads from tttbeads.com, or just go into the craft store and find this kind of golden brown sort of bead. My thread's going to be 8/0 olive done, and I swear I do use other colors of thread, but in the springtime a lot of our bugs are sort of this olive gray, and kind of a camo colored thread's always a good idea. So I'm going to start my thread towards the eye there and spiral most of the way back to the bend. And normally I do use a short shank hook on a caddis pattern, but because I've got the bead on here, that sort of turns the actual length of the fly itself into a short shank, if that makes sense. I think they do take this as the bead as a gas bubble on this particular fly. Now my tail and legs on this fly are going to be natural partridge, and you can't really see here because I'm too close to the camera, but this is a wild, good partridge skin, and if ideally you look for a hen partridge, and I say that because the hen partridge has more of these kind of brown feathers that are sort of down the middle. If you see here on the sides, those are more gray, and I want the brown. I generally want the brown, period, but that the males tend to have more of the gray, the females tend to have more of that kind of pale brown. And this is just a 3-material fly, so this is a good, cost-effective fly. But anyway, I've got that partridge feather, and I'm going to just kind of separate out the tip. And this one's got a couple broken fibers, and that's okay. And I just realized I kind of screwed up that feather because I sort of stripped it a little bit, but I think I can still work with it. But I'm going to take that center section of that feather and tie that in as my tail. And I like a fairly short tail on this fly, maybe 3/4 of a shank length or 1/2 to 3/4 of a shank length rather than a full shank. I do think this fly has very much crossover appeal as a drowned caddis as well, because the overall coloration is actually more like the adult caddis than the pupa. As you can see there, I wrapped over the butt of that, the stem portion of that tip, and then I just broke it. It's usually a light enough feather that you can do that. And my abdomen and thorax on this fly are going to be my Peacock Arizona synthetic dubbing. And you don't have to dub this on tight. In fact, you don't want to. You want it to be a little rough. But anyway, like I said, I'd usually fish this fly in conjunction with a dry fly. Because this glass beaded nymph in a 16 will float under a size 14 dry. That's one of the reasons I tend to fish the 16 in this rather than the 14. But the I will sometimes tie these in 14s as well, even 12s, and I tend to fish those behind streamers. Now, you might be wondering why I don't use a brass bead on some of these for sink rate, and it's because I don't want the sink rate. I want, I want that fly kind of 6 inches under the surface, assuming I'm fishing with a dry. I have tied some of these, mostly for use on the Madison, that I tied sort of jig style with a tungsten bead, to ride upside down, because we get a lot of these caddis on the Madison as well. They didn't work at all. So what I usually do now is fish this version of it with the glass bead, and I fish it above. I do the dropper knot thing. I have a Euro nymph of some kind, and then one of these above it. So this is one's a foot below the surface. The Euro nymph's on the bottom. Anyway, I stopped that dubbing maybe a bead width back from the eye there. I'm going to take the rest of that feather that I used for the tail, and like I said, I kind of messed up this feather, but I think I can still use it. And normally I don't even bother stripping off the fluff, but I kind of had to get at the portion of the feather I want. But anyway, you get it kind of V-style like that, and I'm just going to tie that in. And if it gets, roughly to the base of the tail, somewhere in there, and if it gets a little ratty on you, that's okay. Emergers are kind of like the teenagers of the fly world, so they tend to look sort of ratty no matter what. And so sort of V-style, but if it flares out like it did here and is mostly underneath the hook shank, so what? I mean, it's going to be moving anyway. It's going to be dancing in the current, and so just kind of whatever it comes out to is fine. Don't worry too much about it on this pattern. And I doubled that stem back, and I did that because that'll keep those fibers from pulling out after I cut the stem. Now my wing on this fly is going to be tan sparkle emerger yarn, which is an Antron fiber. And I'll show you the whole hang because you'll be able to see the color a little better. But this kind of shimmery golden tan is kind of what I'm looking for here. And I've got a strand of it about yay thick on a 16, and what I do here is I'm going to double that around my thread, like so. And that's actually what I'm going to tie in, is that doubled strand. And again, that'll keep things from pulling out. I used to glue this in. I just tie it in as a single strand and then glue it, but this works a lot better. And then I'm going to trim that, kind of midway down the tail roughly. And you see how I'm kind of just gently sawing it and then kind of moving my thread, or my scissors, back and forth slightly. And that's going to give me the equivalent of a taper. And then obviously if you get any ratty ones that are too long, then you can just trim those. And honestly, the taper probably doesn't matter on that tail, but I do it like that just because it looks better to me. Okay, and then the head on this fly is going to be the same dubbing. And just a very, very little bit. You see I have just like a dusting right there. Just kind of slop it on there, and just double checking I got kind of semi-full coverage here. I'm going to give that a little bit more. It's very much a guide fly. 3 materials, quick to tie. And so I'm not worried, I don't have to sell this to anybody, and so I'm not too worried about what it looks like. The fish don't care as much. But then I'm going to go ahead and come in and then do a couple 3-turn whip finishes. And there you have it. That is what I call a Don Caddis Emerger. And very, very good on the Yellowstone and the Madison. And then I have caught fish on it on the fire hole as well. And up there I'll usually fish it ahead of one of the flies I'll be tying here in a few weeks, the pheasant tail soft tackle that I use on the fire hole a lot. This isn't one of my top flies on the fire hole. I mostly use it on the Yellowstone and the Madison. It's, maybe the first week of the season on the fire hole there'll still be some Mother's Day caddis, and these work well, but for the most part I use other stuff on the fire hole. But this is a really, really good one on the Yellowstone and then the Madison. As always, thanks for watching, and if you want to book a guided trip for Yellowstone country this season, it's flyfishmontana.biz or 406-223-8204. I'm going to have good water levels this year in July, and not so sure about August because we're losing our snowpack pretty quickly here, but late August should be fine. Early August, we'll see how hot it is. But if you like this fly, like this pattern, like my other content, please click the Buy Me a Coffee link and throw me a couple bucks. I don't have anything to sell you other than guide trips, so that's how you can support me. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.